DisruptOps helps you find and fix cloud security issues fast. Getting bombarded with irrelevant alerts is frustrating. DisruptOps gives security and DevOps teams prioritized findings and routes relevant alerts to Slack or Microsoft Teams with automated response options that save you time. Finally, security is inside your workflow instead of in your way. Listeners can access the full platform free for 30 days by visiting securityweekly.com/DisruptOps. We discuss application security a lot on this show, and we know that the implications for code security have become even greater as cloud adoption accelerates software development. Shift Left bridges the gap between security teams and developers to find and fix vulnerabilities accurately from the source. Shift Left Core is an innovation in code security with industry-leading accuracy and speed. It combines next-generation static code analysis, intelligent software composition analysis, secrets detection, security insights, and contextual developer security education in one easy-to-use platform. Learn more and create your free account at securityweekly.com/shiftleft. Are you looking for a solution to protect your web apps against the most business-critical security vulnerabilities? Unleash the power of automated ethical hacker knowledge with Detectify for continuous coverage and relevant security vulnerability findings. Upgrade your web app security with speed and scale and start a 2-week free trial at securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself.
Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. I'm your host, Mike Shima, joined by John Kinsella. Security Weekly is more than happy to announce that we will be at InfoSec World 2021 in person, October 25th through 27th. This year, our annual partnership with InfoSec World is extra special, as we are both business units under the Cyber Risk Alliance brand. What does that mean for Security Weekly listeners and InfoSec World attendees? Glad you asked. You will get to see and hear from many of the Security Weekly team at the event, and you will save 20% off on your World Pass. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW2021 to register using our discount code. Do you want to stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly? Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher or our YouTube channel. Sign up for our mailing list, join our chatty Discord server, and follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. And Mr. Kinsella, with the announcements out of the way, that brings us to the news of the week. And I wanted to kick off with a short one that's actually a callback to last episode. We were talking about bug bounty payments, and you had made a kind of a reference about ways that an organization might kind of use the bug bounty payouts to increase them over time to sort of drive change, or say, have we gotten rid of a vulnerability class, or let's actually make it more expensive for this vuln class so we actually incentivize this behavior. And Facebook just announced that they're going to have a time bonus payout for bug bounty hunters, which I think is kind of similar in spirit of using payouts, using a bug bounty program to incentivize particular behaviors. So it's kind of interesting. Now, I think they're doing this ideally to extol some patience on behalf of the researchers rather than driving their teams to fix things quickly. But I thought it was kind of interesting that I think that they're reading your mind, or clearly listening to the insights you're sharing with us on ASW.
I want royalties. Yeah, it's. What I was looking for here is I can't remember what their average payout size. I see 40 grand. But that's not average payout. But 10% is the max after 90 days, right? It scales 5, 7.5, then 10%. 10% to Facebook is nothing, right? So yeah. I think that's I suspect what's happening. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a move in a positive direction. My sense, though, is that's as you said, incentivizing people to not teeth gnash when they're not able to fix something within 30 days. So, and that's the interesting aspect, right? Because what you're doing there monetarily is you're screwing with some of the concepts behind full disclosure, where you usually have a 30-day window. And you know, from a researcher's point of view, you want a 30-day window so you can start talking about and getting credit for what you've done. And they're basically saying, "Hey, slow down a little bit. You know, we'll pay you a little more tomorrow for your ice cream today, so to speak." And it's interesting. It'd be interesting to hear what type of response researchers have to this. If all of a sudden now is this going to increase the average length of time that Facebook takes to respond to maybe say 40 days, 45 days? I think it'll be interesting to watch this one and sort of see how it goes over the next 6 months or so.
It will be interesting. I think you have to be in a very mature place in a bug bounty program to be experimenting like this. And you know, in the back of my mind too, I was also just thinking, what are some of the perverse incentives that might come out of this? Basically, the unexpected consequences that you're kind of hinting at there. And I'm going to use that to actually jump to a different article that I hadn't expected to talk about first, but why not? You set this up. There was reference to SonicWall, warn of imminent ransomware campaign targeting its EOL equipment, which in fact the campaign was not imminent. It was actually current and ongoing. And in this case, I kind of just wanted to hand wave over the fact that it's SonicWall, hand wave over whatever the particular vulnerability is, but talk more about the aspect of both on the vendor side from an AppSec team, and even perhaps on the consuming side of being an AppSec team, or maybe the DevOps team using devices like this. How do you deal with EOL software, and what are, either both, what are the responsibilities as a callback to our discussion with David for security in this kind of situation, or what should be the push of, should there be, or how am I trying to phrase this? How long should EOL software actually be supported with patches, and at what point can it be shed away? And depending on how you answer that, what kind of perverse incentives might come up here?
And the first two names that come to mind for me would be Oracle and Sun, which I guess, well, actually Oracle, Sun, and those two. Sorry, Cisco's the other one. Obviously, it's coming to mind. And from the point of view of, these companies have been around for 2 or 3 decades now. They've got very mature programs around this. Sun had the concept of both sunsetting as well as end of life. And basically the idea there is like, we're going to give you notice of X years out, we're no longer going to be supporting the Spark Station 5. Sorry for the flashback, folks, but there we go. So the reason I mentioned that is it's obviously been done right by some orgs. I think more recently, if you think about what's going on with, LTS support on some Ubuntu versions, and Kubernetes is starting to do it. So there's companies out there doing this right. SonicWall I used in 98, 99, so I know those guys have been around for a while. I still want to take a shower when I say their name, sorry. But so for the folks that, SME or SMB that need a smaller product, I mean, that's probably even, you're getting closer, I think, to, and I know they support more in SMB, but you're getting closer to the IoT problem we have now, where people don't know that something might even be sunsetted. So I think they probably could have done a better job. I didn't see the backstory on when they initially told people about this, but now they're saying, y'all need to stop. And I think this is the second or third security incident this year where we've seen people say, unplug that thing now, which seems to be sort of one of the patterns of 2021, which is scary as all get out, but that's what folks are doing. Imagine if you're in a COVID environment where you can't well, hopefully now people can, but for a year we couldn't get back to the office easily. And you've got this thing which your vendor's telling you, unplug it. It doesn't leave the best taste in my mouth, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely the last year or two has not been kind to edge devices in terms of firewalls and VPNs and 0 days for that matter. And you hit one of the areas I was going for, that idea of LTS with a lot of the Linux distributions, a lot of the more mature, modern, open source for that matter, organizations, programming languages are saying this is what we're going to support up to this time. And we've seen that historically as well with Microsoft saying here's our operating system and we're going to stop supporting Windows XP at some point. Yet there's still that cohort of people that just want to hold on to it or can't replace it or won't replace it due to budget or other constraints. And I think mostly what I was getting at is the angle of, I do like that idea of LTS and saying, we're going to say upfront what the plan is, and we're also going to just start to shed off a lot of the older architectures so we can move and adopt and improve things over time. So that in Microsoft's case, they could get rid of the print nightmare issue and pull that print spooler out of, having local system privileges and re-architecting it so it's better sandboxed, and it's just a better design overall, rather than just a whole bunch more patching on top of patching on top of patching. So I think we've patched that one to death. Speaking of beating, sorry,
we
bad segue there. We unplugged it. There we go. Thank you. So to plug things back in, though, you've been plugged into two particular articles. One that I completely missed that is near and dear to my heart because of the type of vulnerability that came up. I can't believe I missed this. Share it with us, John.
I saw this, so I thought of you. Yeah, Cloudflare has this thing called CDNJS, which is a CDN, Content Distribution Network, specifically for JavaScript frameworks. Idea being that open source developers of these frameworks, of some of the JavaScript frameworks out there, they're able to go in. They're able to, within their JavaScript library, specify sort of how it can be built and how it should be provided by CDNJS or things like this. And there was a path traversal bug in there. So depending on, I can't remember the specific file. Let's see if I find it quick. Well, I'll look and talk. But yeah, you're able to specify in your actually in the tarball itself. And if that has been crafted correctly, you get access to something outside your happy little directory. And then on top of that, there was the ability to actually execute those items, which again, probably not the best for a large-scale public CDN. But the result of this being that there was potential for a package to be crafted and uploaded and then be able to execute something outside of their path, which then, could allow you to do other things in that CDN box. These are just Unix boxes, which you basically put around the world. So, it was found in April. It's not clear if someone's been playing with this or not, so we'll presume not, hopefully. But yeah, I thought that would sort of tickle you when I saw that one. Totally. And our listeners, of course.
And our listeners, .. in 17 seconds, game over. One of the other things I liked about this too is that the software that has the vulnerability, our lovely path traversal, is written in Go. And the reason I like that is that I think there is, and we've extolled on this show before, moving towards Go, moving towards Rust for just better experiences, getting away from C-based and C-based languages, for example, that have complete vulnerability classes of memory safety issues, etc. But that move doesn't mean that we can wash our hands and absolve ourselves of security problems and security issues. So you can have a so to speak, more secure language like Go still have security issues. And so I think that's the other reason that it really jumped out to me as just a great example of that shared responsibility, as David was describing, or everyone's responsible for security, still remains in place regardless of the language we choose.
Yeah, and in Go specifically, there's an API there to help standardize a path. So the question comes down to is, does the developer use that? Because I've seen multiple cases where during code review, you're like, oh, there's a better way to do this. And it's probably partially not knowing the intricacies of the language and just thinking, string concat. But probably a good place where a static linter should be able to catch that, is my guess.
That makes sense, especially when there's preferred APIs or preferred patterns to go after. And in this kind of shifting then from something language specific to something language agnostic, code comments. I will preface it with the not necessarily over insightful or overly original idea that we spend a lot more time reading code than we do writing code. Therefore, the language in terms of English or communication language is important. And you had an article here about code comments. So I'm curious if there's a particular one of these recommendations or reasons why code comments can be good for security really stands out for you.
You left out one particular use case there. So we spend more time reading than writing, but in some projects, I'll say, we spend more time still trying to figure out exactly what the hell that code is doing.
Fair point.
So please comment your code. I know this is a big one. I've and this is not specific to any organization. Pretty much anywhere I've worked through my career, I'm always ranting at people to comment their code. So if I've pointed out any of the single one listeners, if I've singled out any of the listeners that we've got here today, I'm not just singling out you, trust me. But 9 rules. I don't know why they didn't make 10, make a nice round number. The Stack Overflow blog, by the way, guys, they've got some interesting stuff from a developer point of view. This obviously isn't purely security focused, but where it is from 2 points of view, which I thought were not. I think one is to answer your question there. I believe it was. Rule 3, if you can't write a clear comment, there may be a problem with the code. And from the point of view of, if you've ever had to mentor someone else or teach someone really anything, but let's talk about programming, say maybe a for loop or something, how to compile in a CI environment, just the act of purely describing it to someone else and educating them and get them up to speed and answering their questions frequently makes you better and makes you understand better what you're actually doing yourself. That concept actually plays a little bit to comments in source code too. If you're writing in C or assembly or really any language, a computer language, excuse me, let me rephrase that, a language which was derived for computers, not so much for humans, is sort of a halfway point, right? It's not English, or pick the language. And basically you take a step back and have to make that comment about what you're trying to do in a language you're used to speaking a little more fluently, hopefully. Frequently that will actually allow you to understand, I missed this one edge case, or I meant to put this one if case in, I forgot about it, let me go back and do it. So I think just from that point of view, either comments in the code or when you're doing a pull request or a commit, actually speak out what you're doing. I think that's really handy. My pause there is I wonder if at some point someone's come up with a module for Git which lets you TikTok your comments or something. I don't know. But yeah, this is a good read. I think this is one of those ones we bring them out something like this every, hopefully not more than 2 or 3 months, and say, hey, go back and think about, as a developer or as a manager or any of these type of roles, how can you sort of improve upon what you're doing so there's some amount of comments in your code and you're able to learn and process and help others from that. As an aside, if I'm interviewing folks, and I've probably talked before about the homework assignment that I give people, engineers. If there's no comments in your code or there's no README, you're probably not going to get much further past me. If you're submitting to me something which you are proud of and that you feel represents what you're doing and you can't comment it. I mean, if it's super basic, like, hello world, okay, you don't need to comment that, right? But at the same time, if you're doing something a little more complex, and it's the first time I'm seeing, I need to figure out how to build it, how to run it, how to test it, and there's no comments and there's no README file, these things are important, because if that's what I'm seeing on your homework assignment, how am I supposed to work with you in the real world? So, yeah, things to think about.
No, great point. There's a big difference between trying to convey what you meant to the compiler versus conveying what you meant to another human, and I think that's a great emphasis. And as an aside, we can we'll set up a spin-off from Application Security Weekly. So send us your favorite code comments, and we'll set up a TikTok channel and have John read them in interpretive dance.
That'd be fun to do on Discord. People should go and hop into Discord and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, let us know. There may be something there. So we'll see. Maybe we have a whole new stream to send off to our TikTok through Twitch. We'll just put all the streams together. In the spirit of trying to explain something clearly, I'm going to make an attempt here. I wrote this up in the show notes about the bypassing Windows Hello without masks or plastic surgery, which is a bit of a fun title. But my explanation or my setup for this is that it's the heartwarming story of a face meets computer. Computer likes face, computer lets human in. However, the relationship status gets complicated when face beats USB camera meets computer, and the computer ends up with the wrong human authenticating. So this was a really neat write-up. It's going to be a presentation at Black Hat this summer. So if you're going to be attending, you'll get to see, I think, more details about it. But what was really neat is that it was saying, yes, Windows Hello does facial recognition to authenticate someone, relies, and you can use an external, a third-party USB camera to present ostensibly the face image that's coming into Windows Hello to say, let me in, let the right one in. But in this case, the researchers threw together a USB camera, and what was something that I didn't realize, they threw in two types of frames. One of the RGB, basically the color that you're seeing right now if you're watching the audio stream, but also a frame using from the infrared, from the IR capability of the camera. What they discovered is that Windows Hello apparently wasn't paying attention to the RGB frames at all. And in fact, you could send a picture of SpongeBob SquarePants. It was only paying attention to the infrared frames. And so they would send an IR frame that they had taken of their target human, stored it, send that IR frame, send a black frame after it, just I guess to demonstrate a shutter or something of that's whatever Windows Hello was waiting for. And lo and behold, they actually got in. So it's a great write-up both on how they pull off the attack, as well as some really good in-depth hardware hacking aspects of the insides of USB and USB cameras. So depending on what appeals to you most, it's a great write-up for the hardware side or just the security side. So definitely recommend checking it out.
Gives a new meaning to little pig, let me in.
Indeed, it does. There was a theme too, and we can either continue on that, but I wanted to pull in the idea of just machine vision and threat models. So there was an article that I came across about a scare quotes undetectable console cheat. That basically a researcher, developer was using machine vision to analyze video game screens, basically to help with things like auto aimers or bots to shoot. And what's jumped out to me was more so of the idea of AppSec teams that work for games know about cheating, and they try to deal quite a bit. There's a lot of emphasis on cheating countermeasures, fraud countermeasures. The same would be in the fintech world or any place that's dealing with credit cards. They want to avoid bot behavior or unauthentic user behavior. Sorry, as I stumble over my own English language there. So this was kind of interesting, I think, as a lesson in creative ways that people can take what's essentially old technology, machine vision, and perhaps apply them in new manners. And it might be something that perhaps wasn't part of the AppSec team's original threat model about how bots or cheating mechanisms might be set up. So it's just that more of a nudge towards creative thinking and in your threat modeling.
Yeah, it's going to see a lot more of this. This is we did our year or two of machine learning with my rainbow hands for those on the video or off, not on the video. But I think we talked recently about GitHub Copilot. We got something like this. I think it's probably fair to say there's going to be more offensive uses for machine learning and things like this versus defensive, right? It's one of those things where they just have to get it good enough on an offensive side for it to be able to do what it needs to do, versus if you're going to use this type of technology on a defensive way, it has to be 100%. And that's going to be sort of tough. Doable, but tough. So I think this guy in particular, it sounds like he took it down voluntarily with a bit of a request from the Activision guys. Once someone's got that idea, other people will be working on that this weekend, right? I don't think the code behind that is too super difficult. You need to do image recognition of a bad guy, and then I'm guessing some sort of, I don't know if they have like a mouse driver or something they're putting in there that they basically move the target around so you're nice and centered. It sounds like a good college class homework problem, actually, like end of year or something like that. But we'll probably see more of this, a lot more.
We will. Yeah, I think it's sort of that old theme, old canard of security is attacks only get better, right? And so it's becoming the cat and mouse just in the gaming environment. Kind of talking about threat modeling, I'm going to use that as an excuse to pull in another article from Kelly Shortridge and companions talking about Deciduous. So this is a security decision tree generator, which essentially is just a nice way to turn a text file of some thought processes, which could be security decisions, they could be threat model, and basically pipe it through GraphViz easily and just build a nice directed graph or nice visualization of what am I thinking about when I'm looking at an application, thinking, what does it do? What could go wrong? What should I do about it? Those basic, 3 of the 4 basic threat modeling questions. So really neat article there, but I also wanted to highlight, it does also link to another article from several months ago, also about kind of a called a retrospective or an introspective on security thinking that she calls YOLOSEC and FOMOSEC. Basically 2 ways of saying, are you approaching security and threat modeling in a way that is you're just using tools because everyone else is using tools and you haven't really brought in the context of what does your company do? What's the business context? What is your engineering budget around this? We just mentioned earlier in this episode about Facebook and it's the maturity of its bug bounty program. You don't just create a bug bounty program because everybody else is doing it if you haven't already gone through and gotten rid of the low-hanging fruit or have some capability of looking at a particular type of vulnerability class, whether you have your own SCA or your own SaaS tool. And that, I think, is just an additional asterisk I wanted to throw on to this essentially now a pair of articles between decision trees and this other idea of YOLOSEC and FOMOSEC from Kelly.
Yeah, you can create that bounty program without doing your basics first, but you're going to be spending a lot of money.
You will be.
I didn't look at YOLO FOMO this time. I remember seeing the one she came out from earlier this year. Yeah, she keeps coming out with good stuff. The Deciduous, I need to play with it. I see what she's doing. It's interesting. I mean, you're basically codifying, at least this is my take on it, Mike. It sounds like you're codifying an attack graph, so it allows you to reproduce it. So I imagine if you're working on this in either nowadays with us all remote over a Zoom or on a whiteboard, instead of using a whiteboard, use a screen and then be able to actually modify YAML, and then regenerate and have something you can go back to and easily refer to after the fact. So that's interesting. I feel like I might be missing part of it, and that's probably me having to do more research.
No, I think it is. I think you've gotten the gist of it, and it does tie back to, I forgot which episode number it was, but you and I had talked about threat modeling and threat modeling tools, and essentially there's a lot of tools out there, some of which are perhaps overly complex and maybe look neat, but in practice aren't really, you don't necessarily need a lot of really complex tools to do threat modeling other than maybe just a whiteboard, maybe something like this that can be a bit more visual and YAML driven, or just a document or maybe a spreadsheet to track things. So I think here is perhaps just that, simplicity is perfectly fine, because the important thing is reasoning through the security of the application rather than having really fancy tool that's that looks cool, that boils down to just what could go wrong, what are we going to do about it.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great point, right? It's just because something looks simple doesn't mean it's not powerful. So yeah.
And speaking of threat modeling and what could go wrong and what should we do about it, there was a really nice article and paper written about the security analysis of Telegram. Couple neat things about this. It does go into some pretty, I'll say medium deep, if such is an official term, cryptanalysis. But it's talking about, it's still relatively accessible in the sense of what does it mean to do encrypt and MAC or encrypt then MAC? Are you doing integrity checking on the plain text or on the ciphertext? Because there are security implications of those particular steps. Sort of, if you have to decrypt data before you have done a integrity checking, you might be throwing some data to be decrypted through a parser, and parsers, as we know, are a great attack surface. But if you do integrity checking first before you start parsing or doing some operations on decrypting or those encrypted blobs, and you see that this integrity is bad, you can just reject the input completely and not expose potentially more of your attack surface. So that's just kind of one of the takeaways, one of the examples here. But one of the other things I like just from the overview is that as they describe this, they say to roughly quote, they focus their efforts on analyzing whether Telegram's MT Proto, basically their crypto protocol, offers comparable privacy to surfing the web with HTTPS. So what's really nice is they said, here is the threat model, or here is sort of the audience we're working with. If you have a different concern and different threat models beyond just worrying about, is HTTPS going to protect me, then some of these vulnerabilities might be even more consequential to you, or there actually might be other more consequential vulnerabilities that aren't presented in this particular security analysis that you would want to dive into. So it's just a really neat way from a communications perspective of setting up, this is what we're going to look at, and this is our baseline for the risk analysis. That's what I'm trying to get to here.
And a little bit of inside baseball. I don't know if it's purposeful or not. I'm guessing it might be. When you drop a nice little tight phrase like that into an overview of something like this, that's what the media catches. Because when I first heard about this, I saw some comment about Telegram security is less secure than TLS HTTPS, and that's how you fit a little morsel of information out there. I looked over you can tell from the side. I looked over the crypto stuff. But yeah, honestly, when I saw the headline last week of and I had the thought of, why are they rolling their own crypto? Especially when you got the Signal protocol and other stuff out there. It's
exactly.
Okay. It sounds like they are going to make some improvements. It sounds like they're not going to completely give up their way of building the wheel. So hey, power to them. It might fit their needs in a way I'm not familiar with, but I don't know. Because as far as I can tell, this is just on the wire, right? This isn't storage.
Yes. Yeah, I believe this is just the communication part.
Why? I don't know. Okay. Yeah. This is there's been another time recently where I mentioned to someone that you should probably encrypt their project data between the nodes. Even if it was within a Kubernetes cluster, you still need to, that's still a network that can be sniffed. And in that case too, their original thought was to go off and start building some sort of crypto stuff. And they're like, how do you do AES encryption in Go? And I'm like, well, it's there, but why don't you just use TLS? So, again, this comes back to the previous concept, at least to me. I feel there's probably reasons to do better in what I'm saying, but back to the concept around our story around comments and things like that. It's like, okay, well, if at least you're going to go and start, spinning up salts and all the things you need to do to get in place to actually start doing some other form of crypto in your code, hopefully you put a reason in there why you're doing it, other than just it felt like a good thing to do on a Saturday afternoon. I don't know. I'm not trying to be cranky against these guys. It's just I don't see the value in what they're doing, and that could be me.
It could be 10:15 on a Saturday night, and they want to roll their own crypto. Who knows? I'm going to try to wrap us up on one final article that is a kind of a theme that you and Adrian sort of started off recently. Just here is call it a think piece. That sounds fancy, but it's more of just here is maybe a strongly stated opinion about banks relying on cloud computing, and what does that mean for availability, or has availability been forgotten? And I do bring this up occasionally because A is part of this confidentiality, integrity, availability triad. And historically, just at the beginning of this year, we saw Amazon East outage take out Slack, take out some Google functionality, take out some pretty big applications that just happen to be running in Amazon East. So I think this article sort of posits, are you building resiliency in your app, leveraging the capabilities in whichever cloud service provider you're going for, or did you just kind of assume the cloud service provider isn't going to go down, but you didn't really deal with geographic distribution or being able to have hot failovers? And I guess what I would sort of bring up with this is more the questions of, is this part of your AppSec team's responsibility to highlight these problems? And does the team that the AppSec team thinks is responsible for dealing with or addressing these problems, does that team also agree that they do have the responsibility? So it's sort of kind of poking at some of how do you figure out who's responsible and who's taking care of availability within your org? I think that's kind of the angle that I'm going to attack this particular article with.
I was looking for a tweet, and it's going to be hard for me to track down. But somebody was commenting last week that, and this is interesting. The question is, do you go the thought behind this is, do you go multi-cloud, or do you do multi-cloud / hybrid cloud, or do you stick with a single cloud provider? And what sort of pain gets involved as a result of that? This is from that aspect of the availability aspect. And someone commented that the only people who are going to lose by you sticking with a single cloud provider are all the vendors that are selling products to make you be able to use multiple cloud providers. It gets really complex really quick, right? It's
yeah.
So the story there is, okay, if you're using, let's not pick the standard one. Let's talk about Ali Cloud. Give them some talk time for a second instead. So if you're in Ali Cloud's US West Coast data center, maybe instead of looking at a second cloud provider, you go to Ali Cloud East or Ali Cloud, one of their China nodes. And there's ways to work around this without going and learning a whole brand new API set. I don't know. The overall, it looked like this was written by a staff writer. It is a tank piece. And the reason I say that is when I see a piece like this, I start the jaded side of me starts wondering, especially coming up to Black Hat, if this is a vendor talking about this. But I don't think.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But from the point of view of is this isn't new, right? You know, Capital One has been on Amazon for years. They're one of the better known, more public ones. But there's a lot of companies out there that are doing this type of thing that, yeah, you might occasionally get bit. And like Amazon actually had their own outage. Was that last week? I think so. But it's good to think about. It's definitely good to be aware of. I really like the aspect in there that you pointed out of the who's testing this? Is this a security thing or an operations thing? And then who remediates it? So back to our both IAC as well as shift left and all those type of things. These things need to start working closer together in the cloud. But I don't think it's something that definitely needs attention. But I don't think it's like, oh my God, this is going to be what we fall on our cross on this one, or fall on our sword.
Yeah. No, by no means. I think it definitely is much more. It's perhaps unexpected if you're just building up a security program and you're trying to figure out, oh, well, we need encryption everywhere, and confidentiality, integrity, those potentially come a lot easier or more easily within the cloud because there's a lot more primitives for doing key exchange, key management, encryption at rest, encryption in transit, doing the TLS between nodes, as you were saying, rather than trying to just figure out what Go AES functions you want to call. And so it's more of just keep in mind that A is part of it, just like A is for Application Security Weekly.
And one last final thought on that one, which I think is important, is for the security team to be keeping track of what the devs are doing or ops are doing, right? From the point of view of maybe they've identified this A as a problem and they want to actually make sure they don't get DOSed or have a zone fall down on them too. And they start actually using other zones or other locations or other providers, and security isn't aware of it and they're not testing it. That could be the sticky thing to keep in mind there as well.
Great points. Where it comes back, where are you deployed? What's your app inventory? What's your asset inventory? And how much visibility do you have into it? So I think that's a great visibility note for us to end on. I want to thank John for joining me. I want to thank everybody for listening. We're going to see you next week on Application Security Weekly.